Hey, this is Jared, and today we're going through day 2 reflections from my time at TMEA 2019. Let's get to it. All right, this one's a winner. We're geared up, ready to go. Okay, so I just finished day 2 of TMEA 2019, and I went to several really good sessions, but I'd like to focus on 2 in particular. The first one was one I went to on audiation. Now, audiation is essentially the concept that where you think about sound before you make it. You think about the sounds that are going to come out of your mouth, the sounds that your instrument is going to make before anything actually occurs in the real world. So the mind space is where things begin. And there's a lot of research that came out of the turn of the millennium, especially toward this idea. Now, there's a couple of major proponents for it, mostly out of the Americas, but some European folks, musicians, who have done some research on this concept, and it is a growing trend, especially among vocal musicians, to think about the sound that you're going to produce before you make it in order to make that sound a reality. It's really more about thinking about the ideal sound, the best sound that you can make, and then using that as a landmark, as a goalpost, something to aim toward, and then when you actually make the sound, then you have something to, I suppose, measure it against. And so that was really interesting to hear a little bit more about some principles about audiation, which we've just talked about, but also how to put it into practice. And so the clinician kind of talked about taking a moment and creating silence in the space, and then prompting that audiation, that thought process, and then making your students in this context, but in my context, singers, musicians in the church choir or in the handbell choir, giving them space and then prompting that concept of making them aware of what they think they sound like, and then measuring it against what they actually sound like, and then after the moment of reflection, then creating the sound, and then stopping immediately, and then reflecting. Was it the sound that you wanted to make? Was it the sound that you thought you were going to make? And then how do you get closer to your ideal sound? So that was a really neat session to go to about audiation. If you want more information about that, I'm sure there's plenty of resources out there. But it seems like something that I do from time to time, but I think I'm going to make it a larger part of my rehearsal. I'm going to dedicate real time to thinking about what kind of sound we want to make, and then making that sound a reality. And the other part of that is puts the the main aspect of it that I think is lacking in my own ensemble is putting that the pressure is the wrong word, but it's close. The responsibility, putting the responsibility on the individual and not on the director or the pianist or somebody else or the section leader. You're putting the responsibility on the individual to create their best, brightest, darkest, deepest, whatever, fill in the blank, but their best sound, whatever that sounds like. It's putting the responsibility back on them and taking it away from the conductor. And so I think that's a really cool thing that I think I can start implementing and dedicating real time toward. So that was the first thing. I went to several sessions, and I learned a lot of good stuff, and I was reminded about a lot of good stuff. And one of those things was about, which is the second topic I'd like to cover, which is vocal health, specifically when talking about your speaking voice. We're going through a rash of bad illness throughout Texas, but also in other parts of the country. I know we're experiencing the same thing. And so what happens when you're ill is one of the first things to go is these vocal folds, the voice box. The whole thing gets dried out because the body is expending more energy, more resources towards the functions of your body that you need to live. You don't really need your voice to live, although some of us act like it, right? The truth is that your body uses the resources that it needs and sends it to your legs and sends it to your arms, and so that you can fight or flight, right? It sends it to other aspects, to your core, so that it can heat the core and keep that warm while you're sick. And so just being reminded of that in this time of illness, in this time of sickness, about how to keep yourself vocally healthy while also keeping your body healthy was really nice. It was a nice reminder. I don't know if we've talked a lot about vocal health on here, but just to run through some of the basics, hydration is important. Keeping yourself hydrated, getting enough H2O, some liquid, some water, and using that, because until your whole body is hydrated, your body doesn't send hydration to your vocal folds because it doesn't need it. It's not essential for life, and so it's the last thing that gets hydrated. And so it takes really days to hydrate, and that's why it's so bad when these all-staters go and they chug the bottle of water right before they go in the audition, right? It's like they just squeeze the bottle of water and just dump it all into their gullet, and then they go, wow, now I feel better. And they might feel better, but the truth is that water, that liquid, isn't going to hit your vocal folds for a long time yet. And so what really that just did is made you probably want to go pee, right? That's really what happened is you enacted that reflex, right? Because you put a lot of liquid in your system at one time, and it was at the wrong time. The time you should have done it was a couple hours before, and even days before, to make sure that your whole body was hydrated, so that water would have got to your vocal folds in the first place. So that's a major aspect of keeping a healthy voice. The second is about medication and being careful about the medications that you take in. It's one of the easiest ways to dehydrate your vocal folds and dehydrate your body is to take medication, and you're not watching it, and you're not supplementing your hydration according to the medication that you're taking. Also, overusing or misusing your voice, yelling a lot and in an unhealthy way, using it more than you should, and also using it in a way that you shouldn't. So making weird sounds with your voice. A lot of people think themselves voice actors and sound effects artists, and they're not. But just being aware of how you're using your voice. Some people, there's a trend, especially among young women right now, to do what's called vocal fry, and it's that Kardashian thing, right, where they go, yeah, it's the burn at the end of the sentences, yeah, and ow, and so anyway, very long story short, you probably shouldn't do that. That's misuse of your vocal folds if you do it a lot, and even if you do it a little, it's probably a bad habit to get in. So hydration, medication, and overuse, misuse. Those are the primaries of good vocal health: staying hydrated, keeping away from medication or overuse of medication, and then just using your voice right. But there are some things that we need to be reminded of that, especially me, when talking about speaking voice health, and not specifically singing voice health. And one of the things that was talked about in this session was specifically breathing as if you were singing for speaking. And what that means is actually being conscious of the amount of breath that you're taking in your body when you're trying to deliver, especially a long speech. Like I'm going through this video right now, and we're at the 9-minute mark about, and I need to take in some air before I utter a full, long paragraph sentence, right? And just taking those moments of intake of air between sentences and not just pushing the voice beyond what my breath capacity can do can really allow me to project a lot better and to use my voice for longer periods of time. If I was just conscious, if I was just thinking about the amount of air that I was taking in. So take more breaths between air. And also, it's important to take breaks between speaking. And so, what we get into these habits of as directors is to just go into this like overdrive mode of I'm just going to drill through and I'm going to talk the whole period. I'm going to talk the whole rehearsal. I'm going to talk the whole time. Maybe you're somebody who does fitness for a living, let's say, and you talk to classes, it's the same thing. That's the one thing that happens with these fitness guru folks when they get into these class environments and they're not used to it. What happens is their voice goes quick, and they're hydrating just fine. They're not taking a bunch of medication, and they're not necessarily misusing the voice, although they are yelling over machines and things like that. But they're just not taking in enough air, and they're not taking breaks between these long periods. They're going for like 4 or 5 hours straight teaching these classes, just like school teachers do. They go from period 1 to period 8, and all of a sudden they've had a full day of teaching where they've been talking the whole time, and they haven't given a chance for other people to enter into a conversation, primarily because of the format. It's instructional. What this person encouraged us to do was to take time and to do some responsive things, to take 30-second breaks, minute breaks, where either silence was or allowed for reaction. So student reaction, or in my case, like ensemble reaction. What we do in my ensemble is sometimes I give them 60-second breaks between pieces. It's not for me, it's for them, but maybe it should be for me from now on, where I ask somebody who was absent about the church that they went to when they were out of town. What did they notice? What did they like? What did they not like? I asked them about a trip that they took. How did they enjoy it? Didn't you have family in town? Tell me about it, Samantha, it's like, come on, let's why don't you share your life with the ensemble? And I'm sure they appreciate it, and the ensemble appreciates it as well. And so maybe that's something you can do if you ever get in a situation where you need to instruct for long periods of time. Just taking 60-second breaks where you allow somebody else to do the talking, and you do the listening to save some of this and keep yourself healthy. And also, what they reminded me of was to not speak when your voice is damaged or sick. And so I think that's a good reminder for us in this day and age as well, when we're dealing with lots of illness. So hydration, medication, overuse, misuse, taking good breaths, just like you would for singing, for speaking, crud, what were the other ones? There are 2 other ones that I just got through doing. Allowing silence/breaks, and there you go. That's it. Not talking too much, but rather allowing for breaks in between your instruction periods. So it was a lot of fun, and so that's day 2 of TMEA. I've probably got one more day in me. We're heading home today, but I've done a lot of things today so far, and I've got some other things I want to reflect on, but you'll probably see me when I get home tomorrow. So look forward to that, and we'll see you then. As always, go in peace.